Okay, so here you see there are a bunch of these scripts that I have created. Um, so actually, they're pretty much just empty placeholders right now. There isn't any logic in there. And these are exactly the four pieces that we just talked about, right? So you have a controller, you have its corresponding view, you have a model, and then you have a service. Okay, so that's straightforward, and these are all the core pieces that we just talked about. So first we'll start with the controller. First, like we said, this will not be a mono behavior. Okay, so this will just implement a constructor that will return something, right? That will return the object basically. We'll add parameters to this constructor because each, like we discussed, if there are 20 different types of tanks, it needs to take in data. So we'll just define what that data will be. Okay, and there you'll see that there are different ways we can do it. It isn't something that's always kind of fixed, but you can like make changes, use your best judgment, but the more you use it, the better you'll get a hang of it. Okay, so tank model, again, this is also a regular class, so this will not be a mono behavior. So this will also have a tank model data. So typically, so let's say if my tank has a different, say I need some int speed or something, right? So let's just use one variable for now. So or rather actually add float health. So 2. So what is my tank speed and what is my health? So every time I'm creating a particular model of a tank, I'm going to define these two parameters, which basically makes sure that every time I'm creating a new tank, I'm defining what these particular things will mean. So all right. So what I've done here is quickly just use these shortcuts. Just use Visual Studio. So all this does is creates me a public property, and this is as good as saying private set. So if you're familiar with properties, all this is saying is this is a variable, but it's more than just a variable where I can define who gets access to setting it and reading it. So since this is public, if I don't define a here, then this means this is also public. Here I've been explicitly saying that it's private. That means set is private, which means nobody outside this particular class can set it. So once I have set it here, if I don't make any more changes to this, the speed will never change. If I want to create a different function for a speed, I need to create a separate function that updates the speed. So that's pretty much it. And the same thing here, right? So if I don't write it, it's assumed that this particular property has a private setter and it has a public getter. That's all it says right now. So now I've defined my tank model. So we'll go over to the tank controller and say that, so there are two ways I can do it. I can say directly take in a tank model as an argument, and then just this basically I'll hold a reference of this particular tank model, and that's pretty much it. The other way would have been that I could have taken directly whenever somebody is creating a controller, I could have taken in the speed and the health, and called new inside here, and then stored a reference to it. Both approaches would have been the same. So the other approach, it purely depends who you want to hold the responsibility, but let's go with this for now. Okay, so now this says that whenever I'm creating a tank controller, I'm going to pass in the model. So whoever is creating the controller has the responsibility for creating the tank model as well. So that's one thing. The other thing we need to do is we need a view, right? Since the controller is the one that manages the view as well, so now we need something to pass the view. So similarly for the tank model, we could say, hey, somebody, whoever is creating the model, creates also the view and passes me the entire thing. So I don't need to worry about it. So one approach is I'm going to do something like this and say done, right? So every time somebody is creating a tank controller, they're also passing me a tank view. But usually this is not a very good approach, because then that means is somebody higher level than this, and like we just discussed, right? Anything above the controller would basically be a service, right? So your service typically, so if this is your tank service, then this is the one that will have to